Hello, everyone. I hope you have been trying to decipher the strange ancient audio files I was able to share. I'm guessing the names of Constance Landry, Timothy Musgrave, General Thomas Mulberry II, and Franklin George Wilkins III will be important in the future. Plus, there seems to be interesting points that could aid us as we continue our quest. You might want to go back and listen if you missed anything. I understand how one's memory can be fickle, especially with so much information in a very short amount of time. It actually brings me back to my first memory. I was young in my days, but how young? I'm not sure. I remember waking up with a massive headache, lying in a pile of ancient data disks. They were labeled. Belonged to someone named Lion Rich, I believe. Must have had a lot of lions. It makes sense that they must have had to stay up all night long, probably to avoid becoming the lion's dinner. But anyway, I was in a strange place with no other memories. It wasn't until a nice wise man from my future colony found me and took me in. Apparently, I was suffering from memory loss because the wise man taught me about how one usually gets born into the world. I spoke differently as well, but the wise man said I must have also read a lot of ancient texts to know so many words and their meanings. I'm not really sure. All I could keep thinking about was why Lion Rich had so many lions. The wise man introduced me to the colony leaders and had me schooled in the world that we knew. They came to the conclusion that I must have been from another colony and had hit my head hard. Of course, I became a productive member of the colony as the cook before science grabbed my heart, as I told you before. It was strange at first, though. It wasn't that I had no memories before being found during what they called early Elder Age times, but it was also odd because I always felt out of place, like I didn't belong. It was probably because the world here in your future is not very kind to science. It is believed that that is the reason why the evil existed in the first place. I never did, though. Science is what allows us to study and learn and understand. And it brings me back to us in our quest. From what I see, the shadows are really messing with our heads now. This is a grind, a challenge. It isn't meant to be easy, and with just 5 rounds to go before we narrow down the chosen one search, almost everyone still has a shot to be the hero. Just remember that the shadows will not stop until we are all eliminated and the green ball is destroyed. We must stay vigilant, we must not get complacent, and we must use our memory to learn from our mistakes and to understand just what we are up against. It's now time for round 10.
Better put your thinking caps on.
The world's essence slows, shadows spread from the pyramids to the oceans to the coasts. But behold the test, a smoking gun, a quest passed down for generations. A prophesized hero, the champion. In order to save everyone, thou must drink from the cup. 12 of us on this mission. What's next? 17 weeks to be the best. Injuries and buys, thou should have guessed. The waiver wire request was denied, but maybe a trade will provide an edge and a chance to be a legend. Fight for humanity, reach the goal. It's a quest for the green ball. Green ball. It's a quest for the green ball. Green ball. It's a quest for the green ball. Let's do this. Let's do this. It's a quest for the green ball. Green ball.
Welcome to the quest for the Green Bowl, the Shadows of Chaos. I'm your host, Anthony Otto, bringing you another week of this fantasy football show with a twist. What a week we just had. Besides trying to come to terms with those top secret audio tapes, almost everyone in this league had to deal with the craziness of the NFL with so many upsets, surprises, and odd game scripts. I know everyone out there who plays fantasy football knows just how crazy things got this past week. A lot of strange outcomes and scores, that's for sure. And next week is only expected to get crazier. So many players and teams in the NFL seem to be in an adjustment mode where they need to make changes just to get back to playing as well as they did before. And the longer season also makes it seem like overall NFL coaching strategies are adjusting along the way as well. Not to mention injuries and bye weeks still messing with fantasy football rosters in a big way. We will, of course, look ahead later in the show towards those next week's matchups. Plus, I will go over the best and worst picks so far from our fantasy football draft through the first 9 weeks. But first, let's get to all the insanity that was week 9. First, the Stellar Bitches of the Western Territory hosted Central Territory's Meow Master at Misty Forest. And it was the Bitches who turned a 56.8% chance to win into a 51.66 to 35.38 victory. This was one of the lowest scoring matchups in league history, with the 87.04 combined points being the second lowest in league history, behind Meow Master versus former league member Hot Steamy Trump back in 2016, when those teams combined for 82.3 points. Meow Master's 35.38 points is the fourth lowest weekly total of all time in the league, just below former league member McGiblets' 28.6 back in 2017. Former league member the No Name's 34.2 points also in 2017, and Natty Ice Ice Baby, now known as My Heart Will Go On, which had 31.16 points in 2018. The Buffalo Bills had a couple of sacks and a fumble recovery for the Bitches, and Matthew Stafford had a touchdown. Not much else to discuss here. Coaching hurt Meow Master and injuries hurt both teams. The Stellar Bitches moved to 6-3 overall and are in first place in the Western Territory despite this tough week. Meow Master falls to 2-7 and is in last place in the entire league. In one of the wildest matchups of the week, possibly the season, and at this point we expect nothing less from the Siamese Dreamcats when they're involved in these matchups. The Eastern Territory's Green Acres travel to the Sea of Angels to take on the Western Territory's Dreamcats, of course, and this one was expected to be close, 52% chance to win going in for Green Acres, but it was the Dreamcats that came away victorious in another match decided by percentage points, 120.94 to 120.24. For the Dreamcats, it was the Lamar Jackson and James Conner show as they combined for 71.94 points. Jackson had 3 TDs, 266 passing yards, and 120 rushing yards. He would have scored 40 if not for 2 interceptions. Conner had 173 total yards and 3 TDs. Freeman also scored, and Delvin Cook had over 100 yards. For Green Acres, Justin Herbert did great with 356 passing yards and 3 total touchdowns, including a Russian one. Mixon added a couple of scores, and Thielen also reached the end zone. The Patriots defense also went off for 20 points, including a pick 6. But surprisingly, Darrell Henderson was held to 58 yards on Sunday night. And that was the game. The Dreamcats moved to 4-5 in the Western Territory and are right back in the playoff race. And Green Acres falls to 6-3, but is still in first place by a game in the Eastern Territory. The Central Territory's My Heart Will Go On hosted Eastern Territory's Multiple Scoregasms at Steel Shores. My Heart Will Go On came in with a 53.1% chance to win and turned that into a 77.14 to 55.32 victory. There isn't much in this low-scoring game, but kicker Justin Tucker and the Raiders defense outscored kicker Chase McLaughlin and the Colts defense 18-11, and Hollywood Brown and Javonte Williams each had over 100 yards for My Heart Will Go On. The Scoregasms had 8 players score under 10 points, including 3 with 2 or less. My Heart Will Go On moves to 4-5, and the Multiple Scoregasms fall to 4-5 as the playoff race continues to be close. The Great Superior Superb Owls of the Central Territory hosted the Western Territory's Uncle Justy at the Great Superior Eye. Last week, it was erroneously said that Uncle Justy was the host, and that error might have messed with his head, as the Superb Owls took a 78.4% chance to win and turned that into a 90.44 to 70.76 victory. It was the Nick Chubb show for the Superb Owls as he had 163 total yards and 2 touchdowns, including a 70-yard touchdown run for a bonus point. George Kittle also had a touchdown in his return from IR. Myles Gaskin also collected a touchdown finally, but 3 players did score under 5 points. Uncle Justy had 20 points by the Dolphins defense with 5 sacks and 4 forced turnovers, but the rest of his team struggled in a big way with 8 players under 10 points, including quarterback Josh Allen, who was dominated by the Jaguars defensive end / linebacker Josh Allen. The Superb Owls remain in first place in the Central Territory at 5-4, and Uncle Justy falls to 4-5. The Eastern Territory's Risky Business hosted Central Territory's low-key Lebowski Thor at the Old Kingdom, and the home struggles continued for Risky Business as low-key Lebowski Thor was able to make some coaching moves and come away with the 99.08 to 85.5 victory. Lebowski Thor had a nice coaching day here, but the return of Christian McCaffrey and his 106 yards did help. Cousins had 3 touchdowns, including a 50-plus yard bonus score, and Gordon and Patrick also added touchdowns. Hunter Henry reached the end zone at tight end, and Keenan Allen had 104 yards. The Panthers' defense also filled in nicely for the bye week with a couple of sacks and 2 forced turnovers. Risky Business was the victim of a bye week hell here with Tom Brady, Tyler Lockett, and Scary Terry out. Kamara did his thing with 104 yards and a score, and Devontae Booker added 122 total yards. Michael Pittman also scored, but 5 players with 7 or fewer points did him in. The Steelers' defense did have enough for the win with about 2 minutes left in the second quarter, but those points evaporated like Risky Business's chances in this one. Lebowski Thor moves to 5-4 and is in second by tiebreaker alone in the Central Territory. Risky Business falls to 5-4 and remains a game back in the Eastern Territory. And that brings us to where the Eastern Territory's Remember the Titans took on the Western Territory's Gelgel at the Golden Sands. Despite a 67% chance to win for Remember the Titans, it was the defending champion Gelgel once again defying the odds and getting the 120.58 to 72.88 victory. Key to the match, Jonathan Taylor stepped up in a big way with 200 total yards, 2 touchdowns, and a bonus point for a 50-plus yard score. Dak Prescott also had 2 garbage time touchdowns, helped turn his week around, and Hunter Renfrow also found the end zone. Najee Harris added 78 yards and a score as well. For Remember the Titans, his key to the match, Travis Kelce, did have 68 yards and a score, but it was still a little bit of an underperformance from what is expected from a first-round fantasy pick. Justin Jefferson did have 80 total yards, including a 50-plus yard touchdown for the bonus point, and Damian Harris scored as well. But there was a lot of bungling it up, with Joe Burrow and the Bengals defense combining for just 4.38 points in a mind-boggling bad week. Gelgel moves to 5-4 overall and remains a game back in the Western Territory. And Remember the Titans falls to 4-5 and remains 2 games back in the Eastern Territory. And of course, for Gelgel, he earns a huge win to be on the inside of the playoff picture and gets another potential tiebreaker victory in what is expected to remain a very close race. Gelgel, unfortunately, didn't join me this week, so I will speak on behalf of his team the best that I can. From the looks of it, once Chris Carson comes back from the IR, the running back trio will be quite formidable. At 1 game back in the division, a Western Territory title and first-round bye are clearly still goals when you look at his team, but it obviously won't be easy. Gelgel has My Heart Will Go On and Meow Master left in the non-divisional games, but Uncle Justy, the Stellar Bitches, and the Siamese Dreamcats could all be tough opponents to close out the season. And with a 3-1 overall record at the Golden Sands, which is pictured behind me, and 3 more games there in the next 5 weeks, Gelgel will be hoping to be a solid part of the lore in our post-apocalyptic sci-fi theme. But as for all of us, we just have to wait and see. Next, I will go over some of the best and worst draft picks so far this season based on our league scoring. Who's the better drafter? Let's find out. The fantasy football draft was over 2 months ago now, and with 5 weeks left in the regular season, I thought it would be a good time to check in on the best and worst picks based on our results so far 9 weeks into the season. I'm going to start counting down from our top 10 best picks, and this is based on where they were picked, what they've done, sort of the value that they gave you. At number 10, quarterback Matthew Stafford of the Stellar Bitches. Matthew Stafford, 89th pick in the 8th round, and he's the number 2 quarterback right now in fantasy. That's a pretty good quarterback pick. Wait until the 8th round. A lot of quarterbacks are picked early, 4th round, 5th round, 6th round. One of the later quarterbacks taken. And look at that, number 2 in the league. 2,771 yards, 23 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. Actually, this past game, when the Rams were kind of messed with a little bit by the Titans, which was very surprising, Matthew Stafford was doing over 25 points a game, it seemed. So this was one of his lowest games of the year. I believe it was his lowest game of the year. So Matthew Stafford, besides that blip, has been definitely one of the best. And that's a big value pick for the Stellar Bitches. At number 9, we get a tight end, Mike Gesicki of the multiple scoregasms, 153rd pick in the 13th round. He's the number 3 tight end right now, 529 yards and 2 scores. Of course, the number 3 tight end isn't exactly an amazing pick, but when you're taking a tight end in the 13th round and you're getting the 3rd best tight end, that means you're able to pick so many other players before. I mean, we had Travis Kelce going in the 1st round. He's obviously the number 1 tight end, but it's just when you could get a good tight end this late, it's a good value pick. And again, it's a tight end, why it's number 9 on this list. But Mike Gesicki has definitely been good, and he still has a little bit of a higher ceiling in my mind. Maybe the Dolphins' offense is the only thing that's keeping him back, but still, he's getting targets, and he's finally getting some touchdowns lately. Number 8. Running back Darrell Henderson of Green Acres, 42nd overall pick in the 4th round. That value pick is obviously why he's a little lower on this list at this point. That's because, he's a 4th round pick, so you kind of expect him to be good, but he's number 16 right now out of all running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends, 706 total yards and 7 touchdowns. So when you're getting a guy like that in the 4th round, I mean, that's a 2nd round value. So you're getting, and again, 1st, 2nd round value is huge. So to get a 2nd round value in the 4th round is a very good pick, which is why I have him at number 8. At number 7, another running back, Melvin Gordon of Loki Lebowski Thor, 73rd pick in the 7th round. Number 22 right now out of all running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends, 640 total yards and 6 touchdowns. Melvin Gordon is doing very well. And of course, again, when you're taking someone in the 7th round and he's giving you 2nd round value in terms of points, that's a huge boost to your lineup. And Melvin Gordon's definitely been huge for Lebowski Thor. Number 6, wide receiver Mike Williams of Gelgel, the 111th pick in the 10th round. And what's he doing? Number 25 overall out of running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends right now. 575 yards, 6 touchdowns. He's been slumping lately. A lot of this point production actually came early. He was actually number 1 at one point, which is crazy. But still, this guy's picked in the 10th round. Most people are just trying to, stash guys on their bench or maybe get handcuffs at that point. To get a guy that's essentially giving you 2nd, 3rd round value in the 10th round is pretty good. So Gelgel did great there. Number 5, wide receiver Cooper Kupp. Remember, the Titans drafted Cooper Kupp, 54th overall in the 5th round. He's the number 3 running back, wide receiver, tight end right now. 1,019 yards already, 10 touchdowns. That's a lot of touchdowns. If those touchdowns continue, Kupp could easily push for number 1. You just got to hope there's not a regression there, because obviously that comes down. But when you have over 1,000 yards too, it tells you just how good Cooper Kupp is. He's getting targets, he's getting yards, and then when he gets a touchdown, it just creates a beast game. So, I mean, again, it's the 5th round, but he's getting, 3rd overall pick value out of it. So that's why that's number 5. Number 4, wide receiver Jamar Chase, the Siamese Dreamcats, the 74th overall pick, 7th round of our draft. Number 5 overall running back, wide receiver, tight end, 835 yards and 7 touchdowns. This guy's a rookie. He's beasting it. I mean, when you get a guy like this in the 7th round and he's putting up first round numbers, that's just going to boost your team in a big way. And that's why the Siamese Dreamcats have actually scored so many points. Just a little unlucky with some of these matchups. But if Chase continues to do that, the Dreamcats got huge value here. Number 3, wide receiver Deebo Samuel of my great superior Superb Owls. I grabbed him in the 9th round, 108th overall pick. He's the number 10 running back, wide receiver, tight end right now. 1,004 total yards, 4 touchdowns. See how his touchdowns are lower than Cooper Kupp by 6, which is why he's 10th instead of 3rd. If touchdowns come, obviously he could go up. Now he does have other guys, Vulture, Ayuk and Kittle and all that, and a lot of those guys are injured. Maybe that's why his yards are so much. But at this point, when you take a guy in the 9th round and he's giving you, again, first round value, it only helps. And for my team that picked 12th in the draft, Deebo Samuel's been huge to why I'm 5-4 and in first place. So Deebo Samuel, huge value for me. Number 2, wide receiver Michael Pittman of Risky Business. He was the 124th pick in the 11th round. He is now the number 24 running back, wide receiver, tight end with a resurgence of late. 658 total yards, 5 touchdowns, and of course, those 5 touchdowns came in the last 3 weeks. So Michael Pittman is starting to step it up. He's starting to look really good. Again, 2nd round value from the 11th round. That is an amazing pick for Risky Business, and if Michael Pittman keeps that up, he'll be a candidate for draft pick of the year if he continues to move up the leaderboards there. So Michael Pittman, good job grabbing him. Number 1 wide receiver Marquise Hollywood Brown of My Heart Will Go On, and I said in the draft show the first episode, you could go back and listen, look at Marquise Brown. If he gets wide receiver 1 targets, he can be a huge pick, especially when he's taken 142nd overall in the 12th round. He is the number 18 running back, wide receiver, tight end right now. 682 yards and 6 touchdowns. And this is on an offense that likes to run the ball a lot. So the fact that he's putting up these numbers is huge. He's a big deep ball threat. He's been making plays. It's just to get 2nd round value in the 12th round is rare. And to have Marquise Brown definitely look like it's not a fluke is going to bode well for My Heart Will Go On. At this point, he is the clear number 1 draft pick in terms of value in all of the league. And I'm sure he's been like that in most fantasy leagues as well, unless somebody maybe knew it right away and took him a little earlier. But again, you're getting him in the 12th round. You're doing something good. Now we're going to look at the top 10 worst picks, and I'll just kind of run these through these real quick. This is based, a lot of these guys have battled injuries and everything. I do want to call that out. But I tried to do my best. I kind of waited a little bit, but still, when you're taking guys in certain spots and they've done nothing for you, even if it's an injury reason, that's a bad value pick at this point, and that could correct itself, but we'll see. Number 10, wide receiver Keenan Allen of Low Key Lebowski Thor. He was taken number 24th overall, so the 2nd round. 54th running back, wide receiver, tight end right now. 600 yards, just 2 touchdowns. That's not what you want to get in a 2nd round pick. You want your first 4 picks to essentially be your studs on your team, and then hope that you could get depth later on. Number 9, wide receiver Stephon Diggs of Uncle Justy. He was the number 11th overall pick, so we're talking 1st round. He's 43rd right now, running back, wide receiver, tight end. Just 588 yards and just 3 touchdowns. That is a huge letdown. You do not want your 1st round pick to be that low on the leaderboards. It's also a big reason why injuries have also hurt Uncle Justy, in that he's not getting those beast games from the guys that he expected to get beast games from. Number 8 on our list, running back Antonio Gibson of the Multiple Scoregasms, number 16th overall. So we're talking early 2nd round. He's the 40th running back, wide receiver, tight end right now. 586 total yards, 4 touchdowns. He's kind of been a little bit of a letdown. He's putting up running back numbers of a guy that you might have taken in the 5th, 6th round. Maybe the 4th round. I know running backs fly off the boards, eat fast, but he's definitely not playing like a running back 2, which is what he was drafted as, possibly a running back, low end 1. And he's not playing like that. And the scoregasms, I'm sure, are definitely hurting because of that. They're 4 and 5 right now. Again, when you don't have your first 4 picks doing great, you're probably going to struggle to kind of get some consistency. Number 7, another running back, Saquon Barkley, Uncle Justy, number 14th overall pick. He's 95th right now, running back, wide receiver, tight end. Now, he has missed 4 weeks, and in the weeks that he played, he actually did pretty good. He's got 325 yards and 3 touchdowns. But again, the problem is that's your number 2 pick. So Uncle Justy, the 11th pick, 14th pick, his first 2 rounds, not doing so well. So that is a tough job by Uncle Justy. Be honest, props to Uncle Justy to be 4 and 5, because it's difficult to do that when your first 2 picks are not, doing well or aren't in your lineup. Number 6 running back, Christian McCaffrey of Low-Key Lebowski Thor. He was the number 1 overall pick, which I'm sure he was in many drafts. He's 92nd right now, running back, wide receiver, tight end. He's missed 5 weeks, of course, and has 470 yards, but he also only has 1 touchdown. And he didn't get a touchdown again in his return. And that's going to be a concern. If he's not able to get touchdowns, it's going to be hard to say that he's the number 1 overall pick. Now, he's already not going to come away with the number 1 overall numbers, odds are, because he missed so much time. But you'd like him to put those number 1 numbers in the last half of the season, maybe in the playoffs, lead you to a championship. McCaffrey could still do that, but he needs to score touchdowns. And at this point, it's a tough value. Number 5, running back Miles Sanders, the Stellar Bitches. He was the number 32nd pick in the 3rd round, 122nd right now is the running back, wide receiver, tight ends. He's missed 2 weeks, but has 418 yards, 0 touchdowns. And he's only missed 2 weeks. So Miles Sanders is definitely not stepping up to be a running back 2 for the Stellar Bitches. And it's hurt. It's hurt the Stellar Bitches a lot. Now, the Stellar Bitches are 6 and 3 somehow, winning some low scoring games. Sometimes that happens, but you're just not going to win many games when your running back 2 is just not scoring. Number 4, quarterback Aaron Rodgers from My Heart Will Go On. He's the number 22nd overall pick. That is very high for a quarterback. 2nd round we're talking about. He's only the 12th quarterback right now. Now, he did miss 1 game because of COVID, but he's only got 1,894 passing yards. He does have 17 touchdowns and 3 interceptions and 2 rushing touchdowns. So he does have a nice ratio there. But you're taking a guy in the 2nd round. He better be the number 1 quarterback. He better be putting up what Tom Brady's putting up right now. Because if he's not, he's a big bust. And at this point, My Heart Will Go On is going to hope that Rodgers comes back and just goes on a tear to end the season. Otherwise, that is going to be, very definitely on the list as one of the worst draft picks of this season, which is funny because My Heart Will Go On might have the best one as well. Number 3, running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Risky Business, number 21 overall. He's the 120th running back, wide receiver, tight end. He's missed 4 weeks, of course, and counting. 365 yards, just 2 touchdowns. That's not good. The Chiefs tend to only use the run to set up their pass. But, they sometimes, you would think Edwards-Helaire would get more. Maybe he does when he comes back because they really need to run the ball with the way defenses are playing against them. But again, you're taking a guy number 21 overall to only have 365 yards and 2 touchdowns to this point is very tough. Number 2, wide receiver Julio Jones of Uncle Justy, number 35th pick in the 3rd round. So we're talking his first 3 picks are on this list. Kudos to you, Uncle Justy, for being 4 and 5. I don't know how you're doing it. 151st wide receiver, running back, tight end is Julio Jones right now. He's missed 3 weeks, but he's got 0 touchdowns, just 336 yards. And the 0 touchdowns is what stands out. Really needs him to find the end zone. AJ Brown is there as well on this team. They did have Derrick Henry. They might have to pass the ball more now, so hopefully in his mind he's thinking Julio Jones might do something. But at this point, you're taking a guy in the 3rd round. He is not getting the value that you drafted him for. And number 1 is wide receiver Calvin Ridley of the Stellar Bitches, number 17th overall. He's missed 2 weeks due to personal reasons, mental health reasons. And, obviously we all want Calvin Ridley to be better. Nobody wants to go through that. We all have personal stuff to go through. We all have difficulties. We all have our own internal struggles and things like that. So I wish nothing but the best for Calvin Ridley. But for fantasy purposes, you're taking this guy in the second round, and he's the 169th running back, wide receiver, tight end. So he's just not getting you the value that you drafted him for. 281 yards, 2 touchdowns. It's just the Stellar Bitches just don't have that type of wide receiver because Ridley hasn't been there. And, I'm sure there's a lot of fantasy players going through those types of things, and we all do. But at this point, he's probably one of the worst value picks in the draft to this point. When looking back, it's kind of hard to say who's won the draft so far through the first 9 weeks, as there's so many players that have done well and are up there. I just can't declare like a winner at this point because of that in our league. Now there's some definite losers. The Stellar Bitches, Uncle Justy, they took it on the chin a little bit from some of their early draft picks. I would say the worst team, unfortunately, is Uncle Justy. His top 3, his first 3 picks in the draft are on this top 10 for worst value picks. That is just, it's been tough. And again, he's 4-5. He's survived to this point. So if he could figure it out, maybe some of these guys turn it around. He's not out of it. He's definitely in the playoff race. But, if he doesn't make the playoffs, he's probably going to look back and say, wow, these first 3 picks I made are the reason why I struggled this season. Now, again, we'll see what happens. Let's guess whether these results continue as we look ahead to Week 10. 4-5, remember the Titans of the Eastern Territory travels to the Central Territory's Ghost Mountain to take on 2-7 Meow Master. Remember the Titans has an 81.3% chance to win, with Meow Master most likely taking a couple of zeros. Matt Ryan versus Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown versus Justin Jefferson, and Cooper Kupp versus Amari Cooper looks to be interesting here. Also, will DeAndre Hopkins return? And will the Titans continue to play good defense? The 4-5 Siamese Dreamcats of the Western Territory travels to the Gateway Islands to take on the 4-5 multiple scoregasms of the Eastern Territory. The Dreamcats enter with a 66% chance to win here. James Conner and Delvin Cook versus Aaron Jones and Antonio Gibson looks to be huge, as is the Ravens defense versus the Dolphins defense. DK Metcalf versus Chris Godwin should be big as well. The Western Territory's 5-4 Gelgel hosts the Central Territory's 4-5. My Heart Will Go On at the Golden Sands. My Heart Will Go On is a 53.4% chance to win right now. Aaron Rodgers, depending on if he comes back, or Derek Carr versus Dak Prescott looks to be big. The Rams defense versus the Raiders defense and Marquise Brown versus Mike Williams also seem very interesting. The big question to me is whether My Heart Will Go On's running backs can keep up with Gelgel's. 5-4, Loki Lebowski Thor, the Central Territory, travels to the Western Territory's Skyward Peaks to take on 4-5 Uncle Justy. Lebowski Thor enters with a 59.3% chance to win. Josh Allen versus Kirk Cousins and Stephon Diggs versus Keenan Allen look to be key matchups, as does the Buccaneers defense versus the Miami defense. My question is whether Uncle Justy's Collins and Moss can keep up with the Lebowski Thor's McCaffrey and Gordon. 6-3 Green Acres of the Eastern Territory hosts the Western Territory 6-3 the Stellar Bitches at the Blue Dunes in a battle of first place teams, with first place overall in the league also up for grabs. Green Acres enters with a 72% chance to win, depending on moves by the Stellar Bitches. Injuries have decimated the depth of the Bitches, so without moves, Green Acres looks to have the clear advantage. Eckler versus Elliott, Herbert versus Stafford, and the Bills' defense versus the Patriots' defense are probably some of the keys here, as the Bitches will need a lot of points and a big advantage from those 3 spots. And now it is time for the
Game of the Week!
in this next
A Game of the Week!
The Central Territory's 5-4. Great Superior Superb Owls takes on 5-4 Risky Business of the Eastern Territory. Of course, the Superb Owls are in first place, my Superb Owls, in the Central Territory, and Risky Business is in second place in the Eastern Territory and is also in one of the wild card positions right now. Risky Business, of course, won the league title back in 2019 in his first season in the league, and he wants to get back to the promised land. But the Superb Owls, my Owls, are also hungry with the smell of playoff defeat still strong from the previous 6 years. This game will be huge when it comes to tiebreaker implications, and the winning team will also collect the second game of the week win in 2021, joining Uncle Justy. But before we get more in depth with this matchup, let's take a look at the host's Risky Business's home base, the Old Kingdom.
Hello. To duke it out to become the second team to win 2 highlighted matchups this season and further cement themselves as contenders to be the chosen one. But let's take a look at the next stop in our adventure first. The Old Kingdom. Of course, the Old Kingdom is where I currently am, though we are not in the same place. But since I have come here and found these ancient files, I have learned much about this ancient kingdom. One, it seemed to once be home to both leaders and imposters, though most couldn't discern who was who, usually leading to chaos once every 4 years. Several secret labs, bunkers, and meeting places exist under the infrastructure seen with the naked eye, and most people didn't even know great battles were won or lost right below their feet, with some of the top minds getting together to solve problems. A great blizzard hit this area, forcing mass evacuations. Some didn't make it, and many of the labs, bunkers, and meeting places seem to have been ambushed by the shadows, with the latest top-secret tapes as more proof of this possibility. However, the reason why I am safely researching and you are all safe is due to the oddly powerful node that exists here. That is why I was able to invent my time scoop, because the energy is so strong that it can be harnessed to power 500 cities for millions of days. This power node also prevents the shadows from getting to certain areas, though not all are protected as well. When I first arrived here, I can tell I wasn't wanted, as an evil force that I couldn't see made me shiver and run. That is how I ended up here. I was trying to survive what felt like a hunt, and I fell through the floor to this area many levels below the ground surface. I have found out great amounts of information here that has set this whole fight up, which is why the shadows most likely tried to prevent me from getting here. And recently, my time scoop has been acting up, and that I have to continually use more energy from the power nodes to keep the shadows from potentially infiltrating the objects moving back and forth through time and space. Of course, one cannot be sure that the shadows will not find a way to get inside the so-called safety barrier where I am and where you are when in the Old Kingdom. Based on the recent audio tapes, I suspect that people can become puppets of the shadows, which would allow for infiltration in places the shadows might not be able to get to otherwise. So don't let your guard down just yet. Now back to the match.
Risky Business enters with a 55.7% chance to win due to my great superior Superb Owls, Nick Chubb, being on the COVID-19 reserve list right now. If my Superb Owls get Chubb back in time, it's more like a 50-50 toss-up to the computers. But without him at the moment, there are still several intriguing matchups here. One, Tom Brady's the number 1 quarterback in fantasy this season with 25 touchdowns and just 5 interceptions. With 4 or more touchdowns in 5 out of his 8 games, Patrick Mahomes will need to revert back to his number 1 fantasy days, as Brady tends to be one of Risky Business's top scorers. Kamara and McKissick versus Peterson and Jacobs will also be a key spot to watch, as the Superb Owls will hope to limit the advantage of Risky Business with Chubb potentially out. And the battle at defense should be good too, as the Steelers get the lowly Lions and the Superb Owls having a tough matchup for the Saints. But I am looking at 2 keys that might clinch a win or might be a dark horse to steal a win. For risky business, I'm looking at wide receiver Michael Pittman. Pittman comes into the week with 658 yards and 5 touchdowns. Huge value pick for risky business, like we talked about earlier in the show. All 5 of those touchdowns have come in the last 3 weeks, with his quarterback, Carson Wentz, getting healthier and more comfortable in the Colts offense. Pittman has 25 targets in the last 3 weeks, and he gets the Jaguars defense this time, which has allowed the 10th most points to the position this season. But then you had the strange shutdown performance on the Buffalo offense by the Jaguars defense last week, and the fact that this is a divisional game. Nothing is ever guaranteed, but if the Colts will have success, odds are Pittman will be the guy that helps in a big way in the passing game, especially if T.Y. Hilton continues to be limited. For my superb Owls, I look to wide receiver Michael Gallup, who's expected to be back from IR this week after missing 2 months. The Atlanta Falcons have allowed 11 touchdowns to wide receivers this season, and Dallas quarterback Dak Prescott struggled against Denver last week and will be excited for a new weapon. Gallup is a deep threat, but he also has made tough first down catches and tends to have less drops than CeeDee Lamb, which might be important if this game remains close. Gallup had 7 targets in week 1 before his injury, and I expect him to be thrown into the mix right away because he opens up more plays in the playbook for the Cowboys team that looks to bounce back from the embarrassment that they just took by the Broncos. Gallup probably needs a touchdown to have a good game, but I just have this gut feeling that he will score here and be a great flex play. And that's the show for the week. I hope you enjoyed it. Next week, the mysterious stranger will give us more insight, and we will be looking at the final non-divisional matchups of the season before the final stretch of the season begins as we hit divisional play again in week 12. Before we go, let's check out the power rankings headed into week 10. Please follow the SunDried Tomatoes YouTube channel and watch content including original shows like Legends of the Diamond, Random Reactions, and Brewing the Facts, the SunDried Tomatoes podcast in video form, and other sports, brewing, or entertainment-related videos. You can like the Facebook page and follow me on Instagram at eclectic_yotso for news updates and just to get to know me better.